Yo, what's up guys? It's Crass here again. Today I wanted to bring you a video regarding secondary stats. So the stuff you get from like normal gems and stats like vitality, strength, fortitude, and all that. And I kind of wanted to go over them mainly because as a free-to-play player, if you keep up on your stats and kind of check, you'll see that as you progress through the hell difficulties, you'll probably fall behind on all except maybe one stat, depending on where your hell level is at and where you are in the grind, of course. So I kind of wanted to show that just to see what you should focus on, because when you're behind on all stats and you can only progress them so much each time, it makes it hard to know like what you should focus on. And I know a lot of people kind of have a general idea, but I want to go more in depth on that just to make sure no one's wasting their resources. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below on anything that might help you as well, and I'll make a video to cover that, of course. So getting right into it, I want to start with the Iben Fahds Sanctum. So I went through the rooms and killed the monsters because you want to make sure you're clearing enough monsters to get your 4 keys, which is a max drop per day in the Iben Fahds Sanctum. It's not a whole lot, but it does add up over time. And sometimes, very rarely, I've noticed I don't quite get all 4 keys dropped, even killing every monster, and that's okay. It's pretty rare. But typically, you can just get your 4 keys and then just run past everything else to the room just to save yourself a minute or two. But going into the first room, the first chest, everyone knows is free. Even if you have no keys, it is worth running through, getting the 4 monster keys, and then opening the free chest at least. But you should aim to open everything in this first room. Because you can see, that one cost 1 key, I get 1 of each gem. This one costed 2 keys, I get 2 of each. This one cost 4, you get 4 of each. And 8 keys, and you get 8 of each. Now, as you progress through the other rooms in Iben Fahds Sanctum, you actually get less value. So, you start in the second room, you get 1 less gem per key used. So if it costs 12 keys, you'd get 11 per gem. And then as you go further in the rooms, you get even less gems per key value. So if you're thinking about this in the long run, which is what you should be doing, especially because the keys are kind of hard to come by, you're not going to stack up like 1 or 200 every day. And the other resources like platinum to open the chest are better spent elsewhere in the game, so I wouldn't recommend doing that, especially if you're free to play. But even then, over time you will accumulate enough keys by just opening this first room to where you'll be at around 400 keys, and you need 377 to open every chest. At that point, I do open all of the chests when I have that many keys, just because you'll be in a loop where you're always slowly gaining keys when you only open the first room, and then since you'll never run out, it's better to just kind of use them all. And sometimes the later chests can give you bonus gems, which can make up for that difference where you're getting less gems per keys, but it is pretty rare. Even opening all chests, sometimes you don't get a single extra drop. And then the bonus chest at the very end is really not worth anything. You get hardly any gems out of it, so don't worry about that. But going into this, I want to go over what you can upgrade. So I've actually made some slight mistakes in the beginning, mainly because in the early levels it's hard to see how your stats are going to scale, and I didn't quite do the math at the time. So you can see, after all of my upgrades, I have less than 200 damage, 2000 life exactly, but then for the armor and armor pen, potency and resistance, I'm getting about 300 in each. And that's quite significant, because if you look at my total stats, I have about 700 armor, 900 armor pen, 700 potency, 800 resistance. And when you look again at this, you'll see that depending on the stat, it's either like half or a third of my total stat investment. And that's why you kind of want to focus on these stats, where the damage and life, 200 damage, 2000 life. If you look at my total stats, even as free to play, it's hardly anything for percentage of value, where 200 damage when I already have like 7,600 I'd have without it. Really doesn't add a whole lot, nothing noticeable. Same with the life, 2,000 life out of 78k. That's really not doing anything. So, you'll want to focus on, I'd say first armor pen, then armor, and then depending on your class, potency or resistance. And if you change classes a lot, probably resistance because that's more generally good. But you can see most of mine are around like rank 10 minimum, and I had some up to 16 damage, which is kind of a wasted stat, I'd say, for my upgrades. But up to rank 10, you're really not missing out on much or losing value. Even like the damage and life nodes up to rank 10, they cost such a small amount of your total gemstones that in the long run, you'd probably upgrade them anyway, just because the other costs, they start to get really high. You can see like 350, 600, and we're getting such few per day opening the first room that you really have to just work on it over time. So make sure to do it once per day because it's a slow grind, and each day you miss is permanently gone on that small slow grind. But another thing is your normal gems, of course. Now, I know that ever since the start of the game, damage gems is what everyone focuses on. But if you think back to what I said about the amount of total stats I have as free-to-play compared to what I'm getting out of these, when we look at a rank 5 damage gem, I'm getting 92 damage, which is a decent amount, but out of almost 8,000, 92 is really not doing anything. But then for other stats like armor pen, if we look at a rank 5, I'm getting 56. So I get less armor pen than I do damage. However, the percentage that it helps your character is way higher. So typically, the best you can get for your amulet is one of each gem slot. The rings can be one slot of any color gem. Hands can be up to 3 yellow, belt up to 3 red, and shoes up to 3 blue. And typically, all we can really do for normal gems, since as free-to-play, the only way to get platinum is by selling your unbound normal gems. So you'll kind of be lagging behind since you're not buying them, and you're selling some of the gems you do get. But for the untradeable ones like hidden lairs, rewards from the battle pass, or from the Hilts trader, you can buy 10 per week, and sometimes in the limited shop you can get 1 or 2 normal gems. I'd actually say to focus on armor penetration, because out of the secondary stats, this one does have the highest value in what you're getting, because if you're below armor pen, I don't know if we can see here, yeah, but if you're below the armor pen for the hell level you're in, you do reduced critical damage. And if you're above it, you do bonus critical damage. So that's a big difference, because it could be the difference in maybe 100% damage, because if you're down 50%, when you could be up 50%, that's a total of 100%, and that's going to improve your kill speed, let you skip phases and bosses in dungeons, and then bosses in raids. And if everyone's above the armor pen, you're getting max value, max kill speed. That just makes everything easier in the long run. And unfortunately for armor, I will say this does help up to the cap of the hell level. So if you need 700, you want to try to be around that 700 mark if possible. But it's a little hard because the blue gems are shared. Here, I'll move my camera here. The armor and armor pen are both blue gems, which can make it difficult. And that's why I say the blue socket is the most valuable, even more so than the red socket, because the life, you can see I have a rank 5 life gem, only gives 920 life, which is almost nothing compared to my max, and the damage is low as well, compared to your max damage. So on your rings, which can roll any socket, I'd say aim for getting a blue socket if you can, and then try to get as much armor pen and armor as possible. However, focus first on armor pen. And for your yellows, the yellow gems, resistance, and potency, we can see here that potency, when you're below, yeah, it doesn't show it here. Maybe I can leave Iben Fahds to make it easier. But technically for your potency and resistance, those are kind of like armor as well, where if you're behind, you can clear any hell level if you're at the combat rating, and if you're super far behind on all these stats. However, it gets easier the better you can raise all of your stats. And first we go armor pen to kill stuff faster, armor if possible, because when you're below, as you can see here, I'm taking increased critical damage by 41%. Basically meaning if a boss or raid boss crits you, you're probably going to die. But for potency, this matters much less because typically for standard mobs, CCing them is pretty unnecessary. You usually don't even run CC abilities unless they happen to be one of your better damaging abilities, because all normal mobs die so quickly. And for your resistance, this is similar in that not many mobs use crowd control effects at all on you. Typically it would be bosses or some elites might hit you with a fear or maybe a quick stun, but it's pretty rare to where you can be behind in resistance and it really not matter all that much. And especially back to potency here, CC effects in PvE are very useless in that all of the type of monsters like stronger elites or bosses that you would find use in CCing, they're all immune to CC, so potency gets no value there, and that's why we focus on armor pen. However, it's still worth it to just try to get these gems ranked up as you go, but I would always focus any gems that you can choose on armor pen. You can focus on damage, even though it's not a good percentage of your total damage. More damage doesn't hurt, and you have red slots that you need to use anyway. So compared to a yellow slot, the red is better, but the blue slot is a lot better than people make it out to be, because these stats will help you the most, and they're the hardest to kind of build up as free-to-play. Another thing I wanted to touch on is your gear, because different stats like your fortitude, vitality, willpower, and then depending on your class, either strength or intelligence, will increase your base stats as well. And if we look, you can see all the stats I'm getting from all sources, meaning Heliquary, gear, Ancestral Tableau, those are all giving you secondary stats when you increase these stats. Since I'm a wizard, strength does nothing for me. Intelligence gives you damage. Fortitude gives you armor and armor penetration. Vitality gives you life. And willpower gives you potency and resistance. And depending on your class, strength will give you damage instead of intelligence. Just wizard and necro get damage from intelligence, and the other 4 classes get it from strength, and then the opposite stat does nothing for them. Typically, when you're going through and finding upgrades for your gear, you can't really pick and choose what stats you get, because typically you'll want to use the piece with either the best combat rating or best magic affixes, where stats are kind of like a secondary thing if you're comparing 2 fairly equal items. However, fortitude, I would say, is actually the best stat to look for, because both armor and armor pen, if you remember, I was saying those are the best stats to focus on first, and this gives you both of those. And if we look, with my intelligence, I'm getting 461 damage with 1500 total intelligence. So, compared to my total damage, it is a decent amount. However, fortitude that I have 2000 of, so I do have a little bit more, but I'm getting 207 armor, 207 armor penetration. So, if we compare 461 damage compared to my total, while still a decent chunk, is really a small percentage. But then compared to these stats, where I'm getting 200 on 2 different stats, that's way better. And the game, if you have 400 more damage, you're really not going to notice much of a difference. But if you go from being behind in armor penetration, to being over, that's where you'll notice a big difference. And armor, I know a lot of people say it doesn't do much, but it's really that being under that hurts you, being at 41% increased critical damage. And there's no point really going far above in armor, because all it does is increase some damage reduction from blocking, which is pretty rare, and Crusaders can do it a bit more often, but still overall not that useful. Armor penetration, if possible, you want to try to get to around 100 higher. Potency, depending on your class, this may not matter at all, so you can choose to ignore it. In PvP, it does have some more use, but typically the type of players that you'd want to CC for longer durations, they're going to have way higher secondary stats, so you'll never be above theirs. Resistance, same thing, where you'll never really get this high enough to matter in PvP, and it doesn't do much in PvE. But, going back to the secondary stats, let me see. For Vitality, you can see this is kind of like damage as well, where I do get a decent amount, about 5,000 life. However, compared to my almost 80,000 life, it's not that big. Willpower gives you potency and resistance. You can see I'm getting a lot from that. And I'd say what I would focus on is Fortitude. That way you can get your armor and armor penetration as high as possible. And then you can go for Willpower second, but that's kind of up to you. If you're not worried about being under, those stats don't hurt too much if you're under. They usually don't apply mostly to game modes. Vitality doesn't do... It gives you a decent amount of life, same with Intelligence or Strength, depending on your class. And I would kind of rate those equally, where no matter what you get, it's still helping your overall life and damage, which is good, but armor and armor penetration, still way better. And then the last spot that we can kind of get some of these secondary stats is from your Paragon tree. You can see I'm getting a total of 160 armor, 160 armor pen, some potency, resistance, life, and damage. And this is a little different in that the points that you put in Paragon give you way more life and way more damage compared to the other stats, to where this is the one spot where you definitely want to focus damage first, life second, and then when you have excess points, start going into armor penetration, and then from there, armor, and then potency or resistance. But typically, by the time our Paragon gets high enough to where we're putting them into these like armor, potency, and resistance, you're probably in a spot where Blizzard's going to make an update and we'll want to spread our points into more life and damage trees. But that's some things to keep in mind. I know I kind of rambled a little bit, maybe got sidetracked, but I hope that was helpful and informative on what you should be focusing on for your secondary stats. Just remember, if you have the spare hilts, try to pick up the max amount of normal gems you can from the hilts trader every week. Since it's free to play, that's really the only place you can target what gems you're getting, other than Battle Pass and just getting random gems from hidden lairs. Make sure as well to clear that first room of the Iben Fahds Sanctum. And then if you're Paragon, if you feel it's kind of messed up, right here there is a little reset button. I noticed in some of my comments not everyone knows about this, so right here you can reset it for free once every 7 days. So you just click right there, confirm it, and then redistribute your points. So I hope that helps everyone. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and comment down below if you want to see more videos like this.